Let's go Broncos! What if I told you that one of the most respected scouting minds in football just outlined the exact blueprint for building a championship team, and the Denver Broncos reportedly check every single box? Not 8 out of 12, not 10 out of 12, all 12. And here's what makes this even more fascinating. While much of the national media continues to debate where Denver belongs among the NFL's contenders, there are growing signs that the Broncos may already have the foundation that championship teams are built on. The quarterback, the playmakers, the offensive line, the pass rush, the defensive stars, the depth, the pieces are all there. So the big question is no longer whether the Broncos have enough talent. The real question is this: are we about to witness the moment when the rest of the NFL finally realizes what Broncos country has been seeing develop right in front of its eyes? Before we dive into everything, make sure you hit that like button if you truly believe the Denver Broncos are heading towards something special this season. And let me know in the comments by writing, "Go Broncos! Our best football is still ahead of us." I'm very curious to see how many optimistic Broncos fans are watching right now, because what we're about to discuss could completely change the way people look at this team heading into the season. Now let's get straight into it. Everything starts with the most important position in football, quarterback. The discussion emphasized that a team can have nearly every other piece in place, but without the right quarterback, the foundation is incomplete. That is why so much attention was placed on Bo Nix and what he has accomplished during his first 2 seasons. One of the most fascinating points raised was the number of comeback victories Denver achieved. The Broncos recorded 12 come-from-behind wins in a single season, and much of that conversation centered around Bo Nix's ability to perform when the pressure was at its highest. Rather than viewing fourth-quarter comebacks as a concern, the argument was made that these moments actually highlight one of the quarterback's greatest strengths. When the game is on the line, confidence inside the locker room appears to remain extremely high. According to comments shared from inside the team environment, players on defense and special teams have repeatedly expressed their belief that if they can get the ball back into the offense's hands, Bo Nix will find a way to make something happen. That level of trust is not something that develops overnight. It comes from repeated performances in critical situations and from a quarterback demonstrating that he can respond when everything is on the line. The conversation also highlighted some remarkable achievements already attached to Nix's early career. His win total through his first 2 seasons places him among some notable company, while his touchdown production has already drawn comparisons with several highly regarded NFL quarterbacks. The belief presented was simple: if Nix can become even more consistent earlier in games while maintaining his late-game effectiveness, the Broncos could take another major step forward. Of course, a quarterback cannot do everything alone. Another major part of the discussion focused on offensive playmakers. Daniel Jeremiah's framework includes the need for multiple difference makers on offense, and the Broncos were viewed as having those pieces on paper. Courtland Sutton was identified as one of those key players. Jalen Wadd was mentioned as another talent capable of providing explosive production. Then there is J.K. Dobbins, who was described as a player making major contributions before injuries interrupted his season. The interesting debate was not whether these players have talent. The real question was consistency. Can this group produce at the level required to match some of the league's most dangerous offensive units? That remains one of the biggest storylines entering the season. The potential is clearly there, but potential always needs to be transformed into production on the field. While the offense generated discussion, the offensive line may have received even stronger praise. In fact, the offensive line was presented as one of the strongest areas on the entire roster. Sean Payton has consistently emphasized the importance of physicality up front, and George Payton has repeatedly stressed the value of building through the trenches. According to the discussion, the Broncos possess several players capable of serving as foundational pieces for a championship-caliber offensive line. Garrett Bowles received significant recognition for his performance, particularly for protecting the quarterback and limiting pressure. Ben Powers was highlighted as an important contributor whose absence had a noticeable impact on the running game. Mike McGlinchey was also praised for his experience and continued ability to perform at a high level. One particularly interesting observation involved the Broncos' rushing production when Ben Powers was healthy. The offense was operating at a much higher level on the ground during that stretch, which only increased the belief that continuity could be a major advantage moving forward. The feeling was that injuries prevented the team from fully seeing what this group could accomplish together, and now there is an opportunity to revisit that formula. The overall message from this portion of the discussion was clear: championship teams are built from the inside out, and Denver appears to have assembled one of the strongest offensive line groups in football. Depth, continuity, coaching, and high-level starters were all identified as reasons for optimism. And that is where things become especially interesting for Broncos fans. If the quarterback position is in place, if the offensive weapons can reach their potential, and if the offensive line continues performing at a high level, then the argument that Denver satisfies championship roster requirements becomes much easier to understand. This is only the beginning of the conversation because there is still an entire side of the ball that many believe is actually the Broncos' greatest strength. The defensive playmakers, the pass rush production, the league-leading sack totals, and the names that have helped transform Denver into one of the NFL's most disruptive defenses deserve a deeper look. What makes this entire discussion even more compelling is that many people believe the defense may actually be the strongest argument supporting the idea that Denver has a championship-caliber roster. While the offense still has areas to prove, the defensive side of the ball already has production that is difficult to ignore. According to the breakdown of Daniel Jeremiah's requirements, a true championship contender needs elite pass rushers and multiple defensive playmakers. The argument made was that the Broncos not only meet those standards, but may exceed them. The numbers behind Denver's pass rush tell a remarkable story. For 2 consecutive seasons, the Broncos led the NFL in sacks while setting new franchise records in the process. That type of consistency is not accidental. It reflects a defensive system that continuously pressures opposing quarterbacks and creates problems for offenses every single week. When discussing championship formulas, pressure on the quarterback is always one of the first areas mentioned because it can completely change games, and Denver has been doing it at an elite level. A huge reason for that success has been the impact of Zach Allen and Nick Bonitto. The conversation highlighted just how productive Allen has been when it comes to generating pressure. In fact, his pressure totals were discussed alongside some of the biggest names in the NFL, showing just how dominant he has become within Denver's defensive front. What makes this even more impressive is that Allen is not working alone. Bonitto has continued to emerge as one of the defense's most disruptive players, giving opposing offenses multiple threats they must account for on every snap. But the story does not stop there. One of the strongest points made during the discussion was the depth of Denver's pass rush. Jonathan Cooper continues to contribute. John Franklin Myers has provided production. Other defenders have stepped in throughout the rotation and delivered meaningful pressure when opportunities presented themselves. Instead of relying on 1 or 2 stars, Denver has developed a defensive front capable of attacking in waves. That kind of depth becomes especially important late in the season when injuries, fatigue, and difficult matchups begin to challenge every contender. And when a defense consistently pressures quarterbacks, something else usually follows: opportunities for playmakers. That brings us to another major requirement identified in the championship roster formula. According to the discussion, Denver possesses multiple defenders capable of changing games through turnovers, coverage, tackling, and impact plays. Patrick Surtain, too, was naturally one of the first names mentioned. His reputation as a shutdown defender continues to grow because offenses know exactly what can happen when they challenge him too often. The ability to eliminate a large portion of the field gives a defense tremendous flexibility and forces opposing quarterbacks into difficult decisions. That alone makes him one of the most valuable pieces on the roster. Then there's Talanoa Hufanga. The conversation around Hufanga was especially interesting because it focused not only on what he accomplished, but on what could be coming next. Despite several missed interception opportunities, he consistently found himself around the football. That instinctive ability to arrive at the right place at the right time is often what separates good defensive players from game-changing ones. The belief expressed was that if some of those missed